The time has finally come for us to talk about an actual football game. The Irish take on the Navy Midshipmen this Saturday in Dublin, Ireland, and today I'll explain why I think this is a perfect opportunity for the Irish to make a statement right out of the gate.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Irish. Today is Wednesday, August 23rd, and thanks as always for making this your first listen of the day. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports, and this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. That's a promise. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite matchup, the Navy game. Normally, this is not my favorite game on the schedule, to say the least. I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, because this is the season opener, and the fact that it's going to be played in Dublin, Ireland, and the fact that I'm going to be in attendance for this one makes me more excited about this matchup against Navy than I've ever been about the Navy game. And believe me, I've been to a lot of Navy games in the past. My very first game at Notre Dame Stadium was Notre Dame versus Navy way back in 2003. Notre Dame had to win on a last-second field goal off the leg of DJ Fitzpatrick. That was the first of many Notre Dame Navy games in my lifetime. But today, I'm going to break down all three phases of the game. I'll share some of my biggest question marks and things that I'm looking out for during the game. And then at the end, I'll give my score prediction. But let's get right into it. The game is going to take place at Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland. I believe it's going to start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on NBC. And right now, FanDuel has Notre Dame 20.5-point favorites, and the over-under is at 50.5. So let's start with the Navy offense and what the Notre Dame defense should expect from them. Grant Chestnut is in his first season as the Navy offensive coordinator. He was hired from Kennesaw State, and there's actually sort of a pipeline now between Kennesaw State and the Naval Academy because Kennesaw State runs the triple option at the FCS level. Brian Newberry, their new head coach, is also a former Kennesaw State coach. So with Grant Chestnut as the offensive coordinator, they're probably going to pass a little bit more than Navy has in the past. There's still going to be a run-first option team. That's still going to be the same, but when Chestnut was the offensive coordinator last year at Kennesaw State, they threw it over 17 times a game. That's not a huge number, to say the least. It would have been outside of the top 125 teams nationally last season, that amount of passing attempts per game. But that's actually 7 more attempts per game than what Navy threw last season. So it's something that Notre Dame is going to have to look out for a little bit more than normal. In the past, I feel like when Navy would throw the ball, first of all, I'd welcome it. I'd be like, please throw the ball, unless, they'd hit Notre Dame deep. But that's really what they were looking for, unless they were in completely obvious passing downs when it was 3rd and 1,000,000. When they would pass to try to beat the defense, it'd be a long, drawn-out play action and then try to hit a guy over the top once the defense was coming in a little bit too much. Now with Grant Chestnut, the defense is going to have to look out for some quick hitters, some hot routes, things like that. I think the defense is going to be prepared, but it's a new wrinkle and a new look at the triple option because Notre Dame has been seeing this for years, obviously. Al Golden saw it last year as the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, had a great first half, not so great second half, but it's going to be a little bit different now with Grant Chestnut as the offensive coordinator and Brian Newberry as the new head coach. But more on Newberry in a little bit. Last season, their offense was not the highest powered Navy offense, to say the least. They only scored 21.9 points per game last season. That came in at 105th in the country. And it looks like they're going to play 2 quarterbacks in this game. Ty Lavatai and Blake Horvath are the quarterbacks expected to play. Lavatai was on the team last year, but he actually did not play against Notre Dame because he had suffered a season-ending knee injury before that. And Horvath has not really played at Navy at all, so Notre Dame is going to be getting a new look at quarterback. They do bring back their fullback, Daba Fofana, who kind of ran all over Notre Dame last year. He ran for 133 yards, 1 touchdown on 15 carries. And the thing about the fullback in the Navy offense is it always feels like if you don't get him, like if you're not tackling him every time, then all of a sudden he's going to get the ball and just break it off right up the middle and get like a big chunk play. And it's someone you've always got to keep an eye out for because they've got those scat backs who are running in motion, catching pitches, and they're like short, fast dudes. But don't forget about the fullback because as soon as you do, Navy's going to hand the ball right off to him, and he's going to go right up the middle on you and make you pay for it. So I'm looking at this team, and I'm seeing 4 returning starters in the offensive line, so that's good for them. We know they like to cut block. It's one of my least favorite parts about whenever Notre Dame plays Navy. It's because it's really hard to get around that, and it's not great on the knees of the defensive line. But overall, I still feel like the Notre Dame defense is going to be ready. Something that's very important that really hurt Notre Dame last year is that J.D. Bertrand didn't play. And no matter how you feel about J.D. Bertrand, I think you have to admit that his skill set is perfect to play Navy. He's going to be on the field this year, so that's going to be a huge addition for Notre Dame this season that they didn't have last season. So some of the biggest question marks I have as I look at this matchup is, how is Notre Dame's improved defensive line going to be able to handle the line of scrimmage? And I say improved defensive line, assuming that they've improved, because we've heard throughout fall camp that guys like Jason Anye and Gabriel Rubio really stepped up their games. And now Notre Dame's defensive line, which at one point was considered a weakness, by myself included, as well as many other people who cover the Notre Dame team, we all had our question marks about the defensive line, and even Marcus Freeman admitted in his press conference on Monday of this week that he was pleasantly surprised by the development and the growth of the defensive line, and he thinks that they can be a really effective unit for the Irish in 2023. While that's still true, what they're going up against Navy is a completely different beast than what they're going to be going up against throughout the rest of the season. So how are they going to be handling that? It's going to be very important to the success of the Notre Dame defense, and it's something that I'm going to be looking out for. Another question I have is, how is Al Golden going to rotate the linebackers? We know we're going to see a lot of J.D. Bertrand, Maris Leofau, Jack Kaiser, but I also think this is a perfect opportunity for Jalen Snead to get out there and make some plays, because when you're going up against the triple option, that's pretty much perfect for Jalen Snead in his game and what he's best at. He's great at attacking downfield and using his elite athletic ability to get after the ball carrier. So I think he's going to be the fourth linebacker Notre Dame uses, because traditionally they do go into a 4-4 set whenever they're playing Navy. You just need the best tacklers out on the field, and you don't really need that many defensive backs, because Navy's probably not going to be throwing it a lot. And if they are throwing it, hopefully the Notre Dame linebackers are good enough in coverage that they can handle some of their guys, not including their receivers who are split out wide. So I think Jalen Snead's going to play a lot. I think this could be a big game for him, but I think most of all, this is going to be a big game for J.D. Bertrand, because this game is perfect for him, like I was just saying. And my last question is, how is Notre Dame going to prepare for this different style of triple option? I think Notre Dame is very fortunate to be playing against Navy in the season opener, because it gives them a little bit more time to It gives them a little bit more time to prepare, because they're not in the middle of the season. They will have time to have game planned for this, and they're not trying to squeeze in preparation for a gimmicky offense, in week 9 or anything like that. They get to start with it, and they get to hopefully dominate them and then put it behind them, because this game or this opponent and what Navy does is not going to be relevant to anything Notre Dame does the rest of the season, defensively at least. So there's a few questions I have, but overall I feel pretty good about the Notre Dame defense going into this game. If you think about what happened last year when the wheels really started coming off, it was not really because of the Notre Dame defense. It had more to do with the Notre Dame offense. So coming up after this, I'm going to talk about that Notre Dame offense and how I expect them to handle Navy's all-out blitz. Hopefully it's a little bit better than what they did last year. Today's episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by Bird Dogs. I've raved about Bird Dog shorts before in the podcast, and I'm here to do it again because they are just that good. Not only do they make you look better, they're way more comfortable than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. So not only can you wear these shorts to the gym, you could wear them on the golf course, out to lunch, really wherever you want. So go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free white tech hat. Once your hat and shorts arrive, you won't want to take them off. That's a promise. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Before we move on, make sure that you've subscribed to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Now let's talk about that Navy defense. It was Brian Newberry's defense last season. He has since been promoted to the head coaching position to replace Ken Niumatalolo, who has been there since 2007. So it's a new regime at Navy. And even though Brian Newberry is now the head coach and he's no longer the defensive coordinator, that role has been given to the former linebacker coach PJ Volker. I still expect him to be heavily involved in the defensive game plan going up against that Notre Dame offense. The Navy defense returns most of their best players from last season, including 10 of their 13 leading tacklers. And their defense last year wasn't great, but it was much improved than what they had been before Newberry had arrived. They gave up over 28 points per game in 2021, but that number improved to 24.3 in 2022, so that was a big jump for them. But what was most impressive about their defense last year was that they finished third nationally in rush defense. And that was evident against Notre Dame because the Irish really couldn't run the ball against them. They ran for just 66 total yards against Navy last season. And a big reason why is because Navy loves to blitz. They blitzed early, they blitz often, and remember the Titans, they blitzed all night. It was a problem for Notre Dame last year. They couldn't run the ball, but they were susceptible to getting beat deep. And that's the weirdest thing about that game last year was that Notre Dame was able to hit them downfield early. I remember Braden Lenzy made that incredible catch, even though he was wide open. Drew Pine could have just hit him in stride. It would have been an easy touchdown. Instead, he underthrew it. Braden Lenzy made one of the best catches of the entire season when he wrapped his arms around the Navy defender and caught it on his back. So credit to him, because that was an unbelievable catch. But Notre Dame was moving the ball. They were hitting them deep early, and then for whatever reason in the second half, they just weren't able to do that. According to Pro Football Focus, Navy blitzed on 65% of Notre Dame's pass plays in that game last season, and that's a big reason why they stopped Notre Dame's rushing attack. They were basically eliminating it from the game, and Marcus Freeman has said before that really any defense can decide that you're not going to run the ball if they sell out enough, and that's exactly what Navy did. Now, part of the reason why they blitzed so much is because their pass defense was so bad. They gave up 250 pass yards per game last season. That was ranked 98th in the country. They gave up 8.6 yards per attempt, 125th, and then 13.6 yards per completion. That is 122nd in the country. So they had to make up for that. They had to be really aggressive. They did get after the quarterback quite a bit. They had 33 sacks last season, which finished 26th in the country. So it was really feast or famine with that Navy defense, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Notre Dame tries to combat that, especially in the season opener when they're going to be breaking in 2 new starting guards. And that is actually my first question about this matchup. How are Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler going to hold up in their first real game action? They're both starting for the first time in the season opener against this one, and Navy is going to be throwing a bunch of different looks at them. I don't expect this Notre Dame offensive line to be coming out and dominating them right out of the gate. I think that over time, as the game goes on, they're going to be able to just out-physical them and maul them at different points, but overall, I think there's going to be some times where it's a little bit of a struggle, and that happens every season because, as we've talked about many times in this podcast, it takes even great offensive lines a few games to develop. It's a weird position. They need all 5 guys looking through one set of eyes. It's the offensive line's credo, and it might take some time for Notre Dame to get to that point because they have 2 new starting guards. They have great offensive tackles. You know about Joe Alt, you know about Blake Fisher, and you know about Zeke Correll, the anchor right there in the center. But I think it's going to be an uphill battle a little bit for the offensive line. So I'm going to be really interested to see how Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler do in their debut. Just while we're at it, huge shout out to Rocco Spindler, man. I think he was counted out by a lot of people, and considering the hype that he came in with as a recruit, it was sort of a disappointing start, but he earned this starting job, so credit to him. Really excited to see what he can do on Saturday. My second biggest question, I can't believe it's taken me this long to talk about him. How is Sam Hartman going to connect with the Notre Dame wide receivers? For all the positive stuff that we heard about Notre Dame's preseason camp, the one position group that you consistently heard negative things about, or at least didn't hear that many positive things about, were the Notre Dame wide receivers. We know how effective Sam Hartman has been in his career at Wake Forest, but now he's got to do it at Notre Dame with this wide receiving core. I think the wide receivers are going to be better than they've been advertised the last few weeks. I think we're going to see it on display Saturday, but it's going to be a little interesting to see how that connection looks. Is Sam Hartman going to find some favorite targets? Is it Chris Tyree? Could it be Jaden Greathouse? Or is it just going to be Jaden Thomas like we all expected back in the summer? We'll have to wait and see. The Navy defense is going to blitz and blitz a lot, so Notre Dame is going to have opportunities to hit him deep. Which receiver is going to step up and be that reliable deep target or deep threat that Sam Hartman is going to target early and often this season, I would imagine. So I'm interested to see who that's going to be, which receiver or receivers hopefully step up and become a favorite for Sam Hartman to throw to, because I feel like once he finds that guy or guys, he's going to hit them all the time as the season goes along. And then third question I have about this matchup is, what does a Jared Parker offense even look like? We expect it to be pretty similar to what Tommy Rees ran when he was the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. But then again, you're bringing in Sam Hartman, who is most effective running the slow mesh at Wake Forest. Is Notre Dame going to run the slow mesh? No, nor should they. But I do think that they're going to run a little bit more RPO action than they have in the past. Sam Hartman has done it a lot, so he's going to be good at it. He's going to understand how to read the defense and make the correct decisions while the play is happening. But still, First game, new offensive coordinator going against kind of a weird defense. It's going to be interesting to see what Jared Parker wants to do, the little wrinkles that I'm sure he has cooked up, and we're just going to be kind of waiting and seeing. I think it's going to be a lot of the same of what we've seen in the past, but I am excited to see what they bring out there and what they look like on the offense. So we've covered the matchups on offense and defense, but we cannot forget about special teams, like I said at the top, third of the game. So we'll talk about that, and then I'll share my score prediction coming up right after this. All right, let's talk about some special teams. From the Navy side, I don't have a lot to report. They've got a new kicker, Evan Warren, who I didn't think had kicked in his career, but it looks like he's 0 for 1 kicking field goals in his career at Navy. They've got the same punter as they did last year. He's fine. But really, this is about Notre Dame in their first game under new special teams coordinator, Marty Biaggi. He has very big shoes to fill, coming in for Brian Mason, who was maybe the best special teams coordinator in the history of Notre Dame in just 1 year. They blocked 7 kicks. They were just must-watch television whenever the punt return or punt block unit, I should say, came on the field. So is he going to be that good that early? Probably not. I think we all need to temper our expectations a little bit, but I'm also excited to see what kind of legs Spencer Schrader has in his debut at Notre Dame. He is the transfer kicker who came over from South Florida. I would say overall the reports on him have been pretty solid coming out of preseason camp. He was not around for spring practice. He arrived in the summer once he graduated. And I think it's very important for Spencer Schrader to get off to a hot start at Notre Dame. And I think kicking is such a weird mental game. I'm not going to pretend like I understand all the science or nuance of the position, but I do understand that kickers are very streaky, and if they lose their confidence, it is really hard to get that back. I'm a Browns fan. I've been seeing what's been going on with Cade York, who's a kicker they drafted in the 4th round out of LSU. He can kick it like 70 yards in the pregame warmups and nail field goal after field goal, but then the lights turn on and he has to go out during an actual game, and he can't make a single field goal. He can't make a damn field goal in the preseason. What makes you think that he's going to be able to kick a field goal in the regular season? Apparently, Kevin Stefanski, because he said that Cade York is the kicker. This is a rant that is probably going on too long. But my point is that when a kicker starts off slow, it might get in his head a little bit, and then now it's a struggle the rest of the year to bring it back. Hopefully, we're not in a situation like 2021, when Jonathan Dorr had to kick a game-winning field goal in the season opener to beat Florida State. I would assume that boosted his confidence a little bit. But I think that Spencer Schrader is going to get a couple of opportunities in this one, and I'd like to see him knock a few in because that is going to go a long way for Notre Dame because, as we know, you need a kicker to be a contender, and there's going to be times when Notre Dame has to count on him, and it starts on Saturday. It's also going to be a little interesting seeing what Devin Ford does as the primary kick returner now. He has taken that role away from Chris Tyree, and I'm not like that upset about the decision. Chris Tyree had, one of the biggest kick returns in my lifetime against Wisconsin, but overall, he just hasn't really been able to break off that many, and it's been a little bit disappointing. Chris Tyree, he is going to be the punt returner, so he's still going to be out there as a return man. But Devin Ford, when he came over, Marcus Freeman did tell Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated that one thing they really liked about Devin Ford's game was that he was effective in special teams. He didn't come out and say right then and there that he was going to be the kick returner, but now he was listed as the starting kick returner on the depth chart that came out this week. So we're going to see a new kick returner out there for the first time in several years, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. But now we've covered the offense, we've covered the defense, and we have covered special teams. So let's get to my score prediction. I like the Irish to win this one 41-17. I wouldn't be surprised if this game is kind of close early on. So for all you bettors out there, I'd probably stay away from any first quarter bets or even some first half bets because whenever Notre Dame plays Navy, it always feels like Navy goes right down the field and scores on the first drive. Even some atrocious Navy teams, they usually have the upper hand early as the defense gets acclimated to what they're throwing at them on offense. But then, once you get that out of the way, the defense realizes, oh, we're way bigger, we're way faster, and we're way stronger than this Navy team. Let's just dominate them. Good call. Let's do it. And then hopefully, more often than not, the Notre Dame defense ends up dominating the Navy offense. So I do think that they might get some points early, but during the bigger chunk of the game in like the second and third quarters when the game is ever, in balance, I should say, I think Notre Dame's defense is going to come through and slow that triple option down quite a bit. As for the Notre Dame offense, I think they're going to move the ball at will. I think they're going to end up with 5 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and they should be threatening to score on practically every possession. There might be some ups and downs in the offensive line. I've already talked about that. Navy's going to try to prevent Notre Dame from running the ball. Maybe that causes some problems early, but their pass defense was so bad last season, and I don't see a lot of improvement in that aspect of their game. So this is a great opportunity for Sam Hartman as the new quarterback to come in and make a statement with this Irish offense right away. If they start attacking the ball downfield, Notre Dame hits some deep shots, and they end up going up big early, they keep their foot on the gas, and they win big. I think that, for as big of a statement as you can make in a game that is against Navy, I think still just the fact that we would see Notre Dame's offense looking explosive for the first time in a long time, that would be really encouraging for the fan base to see, but also the rest of the college football world too, because everyone's going to be watching this game. Like, if you're a college football fan, you're watching Notre Dame play Navy. There's no other good game. The only other ranked team who I think is playing this weekend is USC going against San Jose State. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this game, and I think there's going to be a lot of overreaction from people outside. But if Sam Hartman and the Notre Dame offense come in and they light the scoreboard up from, the first quarter on, I think it's going to say a lot about what this team can accomplish this season, because there are some questions on the outside about what Sam Hartman can do as the Notre Dame starting quarterback. They saw him put up a bunch of numbers at Wake Forest, but I think they're kind of quick to dismiss that as, he's playing at Wake Forest, gimmicky offense, running the slow mash, going up against ACC defenses. That's all going to go to the side if he comes out and he lights up this Navy game in week 1. So I like the Irish to win big. I like the Irish to cover that 20.5 point spread, and I think it's going to be one hell of a night at Temple Bar in Dublin, Ireland. I cannot wait for it. So that is going to do it for this episode. And I think this is going to be my last episode of the week because I leave for Dublin tomorrow afternoon. I'll be there until Wednesday of next week. So I'm going to make sure I get a podcast out sometime after the game, probably on Monday, maybe Tuesday of next week. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to bring my mic and we're going to be moving and my family's going to be traveling and doing all this stuff. But I'm going to fit in a game reaction podcast. So be on the lookout for that. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the pod, so every new episode appears right in your feed every morning, because once I'm back in LA, we're going to be off and running with the season. I'll be back to doing a new episode every Monday through Friday all season long. Also, follow the show on Twitter at Lockdown Irish, on Instagram at Lockdown Irish Pod, and follow my personal Twitter account at Tyler, WOJCIAK. Enjoy the game, everybody, and go Irish.